Okay, October, November 2023, paper 1, variant 3. Question 1. A student uses a meter ruler to measure the length of 6 identical table tennis balls placed between 2 wooden blocks. What is the diameter of one ball? It started off at 38 and ended at 62. What is the difference between 62 and 38? This would be 24. So the distance is 24. You have 6 table tennis balls. So 24 divided by 6, this would be 4 centimeters. A train is on a straight track. The graph shows how quantity y varies with time. Which statements can be true? Which statements can be true? The train is stationary and y represents the distance from the last station. For example, if we say that y is the distance, if y is the distance, so this is the distance time graph, would this represent a stationary train, stationary object? Yes, it would represent a stationary object. So 1 is correct. The train is moving and y represents the distance. So if this is distance time graph, is this a moving object? No, it's not a moving object. So this is wrong. The train is stationary and y represents the speed of the train. So instead of writing down distance, we wrote down speed. Speed time graph, would this represent a stationary object? No, it would represent an object moving with a constant speed. It's moving, yes, with a constant speed. So only 1 and 4 are correct. A vehicle is sent to explore the surface of Mars. It has a mass of 200 kilograms. The acceleration of free fall is 3.7. What is the weight? Weight equals mg. The mass is 200. And the g, is it 9.8? Is the g 9.8? No, it's not. It is 3.7. Why? Because this is on the surface of Mars. 200 times 3.7 would be around 740 newtons. A student writes about the mass and weight. Which statement is correct? Which statement is correct? A ship which is floating has a mass but no weight. Mass is a scientific word that means the same as weight. Nope. Mass is measured in newtons. No. The mass of an astronaut is the same on the moon and on Earth. Yes, this is correct. Question 5. A student carries out an experiment to determine the density of an irregularly shaped solid. The solid is placed on a balance and a reading is taken. The solid is then immersed in a liquid in a measuring cylinder. Which values should be used in the calculation? The value from the measuring cylinder, what should I measure? Increasing in reading after immersion. Yes, if you have the initial volume, so V2 minus V1. Yes. Value for the balance. Do I take the weight or the mass? I take the mass. Why the mass? Because I need the density. I need the density. So it is A. Yes. Question 6. Which diagram shows the rod in equilibrium? Which rod is in equilibrium? Yes, it is A. Why is it not B? Because B would be moving upwards. There is no downward force. Where is the upward force in A? It's acting at this point from the pivot. This is the upward force. So upward force is equal to the downward force. Clockwise moment is equal to the anti-clockwise moment. Question 7. Which calculation gives the moment of force Y? Moment of force Y, Y times B, right? Y times B. So it is C. Question 8. We have the highest point as it's moving down, the lowest point, and as it is moving up. At which point is the least energy, the gravitational potential energy stored, and the most energy in the elastic, potential energy? So the least gravitational potential energy would be the closest to the ground, right? The closest to the ground, which is the lowest point, right? Closest to the ground, which is the lowest point. So this is the least gravitational potential energy. What about the most elastic elastic potential energy, strain energy? It would be also the lowest point. Why? Because the spring is extended the most. It is extended the most at this point. So the lowest and the lowest. Question 9. How many of these resources are classified as renewable? How many of these are renewable? Is nuclear fuel renewable? No. Light, yes, 1. Hydroelectric, 2. Geothermal, 3. Tides, 4. Fossil fuels, no. Biofuels, yes, so you have 5 of them. 5 of them are renewable. Question 10. A microwave oven is rated at 900 watts. What does 900 watts mean? It is the power or the energy per unit time. The power or the energy per unit time. So energy joules every second. Energy per unit time. Question 11. Why is it easier to push sharp nail rather than a blunt nail? Sharp nail with a pointy edge. Why would it be easier? Because of the Yes, as you decrease the area, the pressure increases. Larger pressure. As you decrease the area, the pressure increases. Question 12. A sealed bottle of constant volume contains air. The air is heated by the sun. Constant volume has a constant volume. It is heated by the sun. What happens to the speed and what happens to the distance between the particles? As the heat increases, the speed, the kinetic energy increases. What about the distance between the particles? Does it also increase? It should increase. Yes? No, it shouldn't increase. Why? Because it has a constant volume. So it will stay the same. It will stay the same. 13. Which graph shows the pressure with volume at constant temperature? Pressure and volume with what happens to the pressure with the volume? Aren't they inversely proportional? Yes, they are inversely proportional, which is C. As the volume increases, the pressure decreases. What happens when a metal block is heated? Thermal expansion. So the width, height, and length, all of them increase. Which statement about the temperature of the solid describes what happens when a solid is melting? If you have a melting solid, melting ice, for example, if you have melting ice, what happens to this melting ice? The temperature remains constant. The temperature does not increase. Melting ice, the temperature remains constant. It gains energy. Yes, it does gain energy. Why does it gain energy? This energy gained is used up to break down the bonds between the solid molecules and change them to liquid molecules. Okay, so yes, it does gain energy, but this temperature remains constant. 16, you have, okay, a cupboard and you have a heater behind it. Which row describes the temperature and the direction of movement of the air in the gap? The heater, it heats up the air. So the temperature of this air increases. What happens to hot air? What happens to hot air from the heater? The hot air moves upwards, right? The hot air moves upwards. Therefore, this hot air that has moved upwards has to be replaced by colder air, right? It has to be replaced by colder air. From where will this cold air come from? It will come through through this gap. The air will come through this gap. So cold air will move towards the heater. It will move towards the heater this direction because it has to replace the hot air that has moved upwards. Which statement about waves is correct? Waves. All waves can travel through a vacuum. All waves have the same speed. Seismic S waves can be no. Seismic or S waves are transverse. Waves travel transfer energy without transferring matter. Yes, this is correct. Question 18. Which is the amplitude and which is the wavelength? The amplitude is P. Okay, and the wavelength is S. P and S. Question 19. Which colors are seen at X, Y, and Z? X, Y, and Z. Okay, so we have Roy Gbiv, right? Roy Gbiv. So X should be red and Z and then Y should be violet. Is that correct? No, it's not. Right, it is wrong. Why is it wrong? Because this is an inverted prism. It's an inverted prism, meaning that you have them the wrong way. Actually, X would be violet and Y would be red. X would be violet and Y would be red. Okay. Okay. X would be violet and Y would be red. So it's C. Okay. And Z could be green or whatever color. What is the angle of reflection? It's 35, isn't it? No, it's not 35. Why isn't it 35? Because the angle of incidence is not 35. The angle of incidence is actually 55. 90 minus 35, which is 50. So this is the angle of incidence. Therefore, the angle of reflection has to also be 55. Question 21. Which position is the image of the top of the object form? So this is the top of the object. Where would the top of the image be? Isn't this a thin converging lens? Yes. And this is a real image that is produced on the screen. Yes. The real image would be also inverted. This has to be an inverted image. Therefore, the top of the object would be at C. Okay, it would be at C. Why? Because it's inverted. We'd have the arrow pointing downwards. So the top of the object would be at C. Diagram shows the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, which types of waves are E, F, and G? G is the radio waves, okay, microwaves, infrared, and then the light waves, and then the X-rays. X-rays, visible light, and radio waves. A sound is produced and an echo is heard. An echo is heard. What happens to echo? What are the properties of the echo? The main property of the echo that you have to understand is that the amplitude is always lower. The amplitude is always lower. Why? Because it's a bit quieter. Echoes are a bit quieter than the original sounds. What about the frequency and the speed? They are the same. The frequency and the speed do not change at all. Which metal can be attracted by a magnet? Definitely an iron. Which of these circuits does the ammeter measure the current in the resistor? 1, yes, it's in series. 2, yes, it is also in series. 3, no, it's in parallel, so this is wrong. So 1 and 2 only. 26. Which substances both contain large concentrations of free electrons, free moving electrons? They are in metals. Free moving electrons in metals, silver and gold. What is the unit of resistance? Ohm. A teacher wishes to show the production of electrostatic charges. She holds a rod and rubs it with a cotton cloth. A copper rod, a glass rod, a plastic rod, and a steel rod are available. Which two rods would both be suitable to use? Can't she use the copper rod? No, because it's a metal. We need non-metals. Glass, yes. Plastic, yes. Steel, no. So only the glass and plastic rods are suitable. Resistors of resistance 2 and 3 ohms are connected in two different circuits. What is the total resistance in each circuit? If they are in series, you just add them up. So it's greater than 3, right? It is greater. If they are in parallel, what happens to the total resistance? It is less than the least resistor. Less than 2. Parallel circuits, less than the least resistor. 30, which fuse is the most suitable? So now we have an electrical heater, right? We have an electrical heater, which has a current, a normal operating current of 5 amperes. The heater is connected to a mains, okay, on a flexible cable that can carry a current up to 15 amperes. And the main circuit can carry up to 30 amperes. This is the main circuit. Which fuse would be suitable? We always said that the fuse, okay, a suitable fuse has to be greater than the device and less than the cable. Has to be greater than the device and less than the cable. So the device now needs 5 amperes to operate normally, and the cable can withstand up to what? Up to 15 amperes. Up to 15 amps. So the fuse has to be something in the middle, which is 10 amps. Question 31. Which change would increase the induced electromotive force of the coil? I need to increase the induced current, increase the induced voltage. Increasing the number of turns. Yes, it would increase the induced EMF. 32. Current passes along the wire between poles of a permanent magnet. The wire experiences a force due to the magnetic field. What will change the direction of this force? So, for example, the force on the wire is upwards, the wire is moving upwards now. What could change the direction? How can I change the direction? By reversing the current. Yes, by reversing the current. What is a transformer used for? A transformer is used for what? Is it used for changing a direct? No, it's not used for changing a direct to an alternating current. Is it changing the magnitude of an alternating voltage? Can it be used to change the magnitude, the quantity, the amount of the voltage produced? Yes. We have step-up transformers and step-down transformers. You literally increase the voltage, stepping up the voltage, and you step down the. So you're changing the magnitude of this voltage. Changing the magnitude of this voltage. Question 34. Protons are positive, neutrons are zero, and electrons are negative. C. 35. Half-life of carbon is 5,700 years. An object containing carbon has a count rate of 100 counts per minute. Which point on the graph corresponds to 11,400 years after the formation of an object? 11,400 years means what? Means that you have had two half-lives. Why? Because 11,400 divided by 5,700, this is two half-lives. Meaning that you have divided, okay, by 2 how many times? 2 times. You divide by 2 how many times? 2 times. What is the initial count rate? It was 100. So 100 divided by 2 is 50, and then 50 divided by 2 is 25. From the graph, yeah, this is 100. Can I plot the other points? Yes, 75, 50, and 25. So if we draw a line from 25, it would reach D. 2 half-lives. You divide it by 2. How many times? 2 times. 36. Which type of radioactive decay causes the nucleus of one element to change to another? Does the alpha change it? Yes. Beta? Yes. Gamma? No, it does not change it. So it is A. Yes, alpha and beta change the element, but the gamma does not change the element. 37. Which action will not reduce the total radiation that reaches the scientist? We have some precautions taken. Which action would not reduce the amount of radiation? Keeping a distance. Yes, keep the distance as low as possible. Keeping the temperature as low as possible. Does the temperature have to do with the amount of radiation reached? No, this is wrong. Keeping the time, yes. Okay, reducing the time of exposure. Placing a LED screen, yes, some barrier. This would also be correct. So the only wrong thing is to decrease the temperature. It has no effect. Which time period is approximately equal to 24 hours? The time for the Earth to complete one rotation on its own axis. On its own axis, yes. Question 39. The nearest star to the Sun is about 4 light years away. About what? 4 light years away. A student makes 3 statements about the star. Light from the star takes about 4 years to reach the Earth. Takes about 4 years to reach, yes, 4 light years, so it takes 4 years to reach the Earth. Light from the Sun takes about 4 years to travel to the star and back to Earth. Travel to the star and back to Earth. Actually, this is wrong. It would take 8 years to travel to the star and back. Why? Because you can think of it as an echo, for example. So as it goes and comes back, it takes 8 years. So this is Wrong. The star is outside our galaxy? No, definitely not, because our galaxy is 100,000 light years. Okay, length of our the diameter of our galaxy. So one only table shows some elements, some regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. Which row shows one of the most common elements in the sun and one of the regions in which the sun radiates most of its energy? Is iron common in the sun? No. Hydrogen? The region, would it be gamma or infrared? No, the infrared. The sun produces most of its energy in the form of infrared radiation. Okay?